And yes, it is very possible to draw a direct line, a thick line, a not particularly controversial line between the atrocities perpetrated by Europeans against non European peoples hundreds of years ago to the inequities in all of these successor states in the 21st century. And they are rampant, not just in the United States. Let's talk about some other Anglophone countries. Let's talk about Australia, where Indigenous Australians make up 2% of the population in Australia, but 27% of the prison population
Yeah,
in that country.
that's
That's
right.
not a great record on race, I would say. Let's talk about England, where black Britons make up 3% of the population, but 12% of the prisoners. Also, not great. In this country, African Americans make up 12% of the population and 33% of the prison population. So that's roughly a 3x multiple. Um, and these are not good records, right? It's not just the United States. France, if we went into France, if we went into Germany, if we went into Sweden, um, some societies, are a lot less likely to jail people in general. They have smaller prison populations, but I think you're going to see disproportionalities in pretty much all of them. And when you look at that, you are seeing the effects of systemic racism, by and large, uh, that were created in some cases centuries ago and continue through the present day.
So this is like the small d democratic question, right?
Yeah.
Can democracies can democracies learn and grow and seek justice, right? And to do so in a way that doesn't lead to, in the small c conservative way, losing everything that was also good in the process.
Yeah. So
Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. Well, what I'm going to say is I think the clear answer is yes. And I think international relations actually has a theoretical framework for this in the area of the creation of international norms. And a norm it's a pretty simple idea. It's just it's defined as a standard of appropriate behavior for actors within a given identity. So what's fair game and what isn't? Um, it used to be that using landmines in warfare was fair game up until what 5 or 6 decades ago, right? And
I think it
now,
was it was more recent than that because
was
what's
it even more recently?
yeah, I'm blanking on her name. She won the Nobel Prize in the earlier part of this century for the landmine ban. But yeah, I mean, this is yeah. Long story short, you're right. There's now a norm on not using landmines. There's a question of like what other weapons shouldn't you use? What are nuclear weapons?
Chemical weapons, nuclear weapons
Right.
are both taboo.
Yeah.
Biological weapons. In large parts of the world, the death penalty is taboo. Not in this country and Saudi Arabia and places like that, Iran. But throughout most of the developed world at this point, they don't use the death penalty. Um, even in exceptional circumstances, it's just been made illegal. A much earlier example is, of course, slavery. There the slave trade was outlawed in most of Europe in, I believe, the early 19th century. And the U.S. and Brazil were both outliers. Um, Took longer and was significantly bloodier. Those are examples of international norms that were created by basically citizens within countries leading interest groups and agitating and protesting and getting people on their side. And, um, you know, over time, shifting the Overton window, the sort of range of things that people want to talk about and consider appropriate to talk about, away from slavery being okay. The abolitionists, it took a long time in this country. They were present at the inception of this country, and it took them centuries to get there and a civil war, but it did happen. Um, and Nuclear weapons happened a lot faster because the consequences of nuclear weapons were a lot more immediate. But you could say how many people were killed by slavery over the course of centuries versus nuclear weapons in over the course of minutes, hours, and days, right? Um, Slavery killed far more people uh, at the time and then throughout the centuries, right? Um, Racism has killed far more people than nuclear weapons.